Did you know one of David's secrets also was that he had really good friends? Hi, my name's Andrew. This is Faith Boost, and I'm here today to boost your faith with ancient secrets that work in the modern world. Where we are looking at King David, we know he was a legend. We know he wrote a lot of the Psalms. We know he was the greatest king that Israel ever had. We also know he defeated Goliath. He was large and in charge, and he was winning. He won so much, never lost a battle as a military commander. There are not many military commanders in history that can say, I never lost a battle. Well, David is one of them. But let's look at some of the keys that worked in his life. And one of them is that he had a really good friend called Jonathon. The Bible says in 1 Samuel chapter 23, verse 16, that David was fleeing from Saul the king. The king had departed from God in his heart. He was rebelling against God. And, if you want to use a New Testament terminology, Saul's flesh had overtaken his life. He was no longer being led of the Spirit. He was being led by his flesh. And he wanted to kill David because of his insecurity and because he was threatened by David. And we see this in the Bible. We see it in history. You can even see it in the modern world if you look closely enough. People who want to be in charge, they want to control, they want to be the leaders, they're often threatened by other people if they're not in a good place with God. When Jesus was born, you remember the story, Herod the king, when he heard a great king was being born in Jerusalem, in Bethlehem I should say, he got all the babies killed because he was threatened by the thought of someone coming and taking away his power. It's a very ugly thing, this side of human nature that longs for power. You know, wherever you are in the world right now, it's a good thing to pray that God raises up godly leaders, men and women who fear God, who want to be in leadership roles, not to serve themselves or their own ego or their own insecurity, but because they want to serve God. And those people do exist. They're out there. They're in the Australian Parliament, some of them. They're in the US Congress, and they're in the British, government system as well. But we need more. We need more leaders who genuinely fear God. And Saul was not one of those leaders towards the end of his life. So what's he do? He's trying to kill David. What had David done wrong? Well, he got anointed king. It wasn't his choice. God sent Samuel to his world and laid hands on him, poured some oil on his head and said, you're going to be the next king. And once Saul knew that, he was threatened by David and he's trying to kill him. Not a great place to be for David, but there's a message in that we'll cover later. But the Bible says David is hiding in the forest with his men. All these discontented, disillusioned, discouraged, indebted men gathered to David. They eventually became known as the mighty men, but they were just David's companions in the early stages of his life here. And the Bible says, it would have been hard. You're just thinking, wow, the king wants to kill me. And this is the nation of Israel. This is God's nation. You've got to remember it was a physical nation, but it was also a spiritual nation. And the king was a leader, before God. And David's probably going through those times where he's questioning himself, wondering what he's done wrong, wondering if he's on the right path. Have you ever been there? You're wondering if you've done something wrong because people don't like you, and you're thinking, man, have I done something wrong here? But sometimes it's just that you haven't done anything wrong, but other people are not in a good place. But the Bible says that Jonathon came to David in the forest and encouraged or strengthened his hand in God. And what this tells me is that David was a good friend. Because you know what? To have good friends, you've got to be a good friend. So David had invested in this friendship, in this relationship. He was very loyal to Jonathon. And I want to just highlight a couple of things, what makes great friends. Number one, loyalty. David was loyal to Jonathon. He didn't betray him. He didn't go behind his back. The other thing is that David was honest. We see that there were different times where David would catch up with Jonathon, just tell him his whole heart and tell him what was going on and just say, I don't know what's going on here, man. This is hard. I'm struggling. And just that honesty and that transparency. And I think for us to build good friendships, good relationships in this world, one of the great keys is honesty and transparency, that there's nothing hidden, that there's no secrets, that you're not doing things and not being open with people. I think when we open up our hearts to people, it's actually a really freeing thing. It's a liberating thing, and it brings an incredible sense of freedom and an incredible sense of peace to your own life, but it also breeds trust and strong relationships with other people. So I want to encourage you today, Make sure you've got good friends in your life. If you don't, find good friends. How do you find good friends? Well, find someone with the same values as you. If you want to live for God, find someone living for God. If you love the Lord, find someone who loves the Lord. If you go to church every week, find someone that goes to church every week. You've got to be on the same page as friends, and you've got to be with someone you can actually trust enough to open up to. Open up your heart, open up your life, build great friendships, just like David had a great friend in Jonathon.